All right, so I'm here today with Max and Sam from Timewave. I mean, Sam has been from many different places. It was the ICF before, Interchain Berlin, the Atom 2.0 group, of which Max was also an author. But today we are here to talk about Timewave. And Timewave is essentially, to my understanding, a very similar concept as the Interchain Allocator that was part of the Atom 2.0 white paper. And so I'm delighted to have these guys today. I think it's their first interview as Timewave. And so we're kind of breaking news here on the informal YouTube channel. So maybe let's start very quickly with a quick round of intro for both Sam and Max, maybe starting with Sam.
Yeah. First, thanks so much for the invitation. It's really nice to be, making our debut here. My background, so I joined the ICF about 3 years ago. Prior to that, I'd done a bunch of consulting, worked on a number of Cosmos projects and Ethereum projects, doing a range of things from mechanism design, product strategy, brand design, stuff like that. My academic background is actually in chemical physics. So I did like protein folding research and some genomics research, and ended up kind of making my way into crypto. I was living in New York. And today am the head of product and strategy at Skip. Skip is an MEV and really interchain UX company, and a co-founder of Timewave, which we'll get into in depth here.
Yeah. What about you, Max? I think you're a little, maybe a bit more low profile in Cosmos so far, even though your name was on a very famous paper now and on the proposal. But maybe a bit of your background is required.
Yeah, happy to give my story. So I've been an entrepreneur for most of my life. Lemonade stand when I was a kid, multiple endeavors when I was in high school, studied finance in college, and worked as a management consultant for a few years after that, and then went to real estate development, which I really didn't like. I was like, okay, why don't I like this? There's lack of growth, lack of innovation. And when I heard about Ethereum, it really blew my mind. And so I was like, I want to get into crypto. How do I do it? And I actually wrote a paper about Cosmos and Polkadot back in 2017. Never really put it on a public channel, just shared it privately. It was half white paper, half like investment memo. And by the end of it, I was super sold, YOLO'd into crypto. And over the past 5 years, I've been doing a bunch of things. Did some trading, did some VC, did some advisory, worked on an NFT company, went to a software engineering bootcamp. And April of last year, I reached a point where I wanted to start building my own thing. And I wanted it to be something that would bring a lot of value to others. And at the time, I found Olympus DAO really fascinating, the whole concept of algorithmic monetary policy. And I was like, okay, it's been forked onto all these EVM chains. Why isn't it in Cosmos yet? And so my journey, the resumption of my Cosmos journey in 2022 was just as simple as me trying to build an Olympus clone in Cosmos. And as I was doing that, I met Zucky. He looped me into the whole Atom 2.0 crew. We did the paper, and my main contribution to that was the Interchain Allocator. And from the beginning, it was never envisioned as like a hub-specific thing. It was always an interchain resource. And so even though Prop 82 didn't pass, I maintain conviction that this is a really important thing, that it could bring a lot of value to a lot of people. And so, here we are doing Timewave, making it happen.
So before Timewave, we should probably talk a little bit about Atom 2.0, so we get the elephant out of the room in here. Maybe Max, can you explain? Oh no, actually, Sam was the one that kind of originated the whole thing. So can you explain briefly how Atom 2.0 came to be? And there was a bunch of author on that paper. Very briefly, right? Like this is not about Atom 2.0, obviously, and you've done a ton of interview about Atom 2.0. But since the Timewave, it was the idea was created there. I think it's good to give a bit of a background on that.
So the origin story, maybe I'll trace it back to early on when I was working at the ICF. Basically the ecosystem had gone through a pretty significant transition after Tendermint initially blew up, and about 6 months or so into me working at the ICF, I started having a conversation with Ethan about the hub because it really hadn't gotten a lot of attention. And we wrote a more kind of narrativized blog post called "The Cosmos Hub is a Port City," which was not a technical vision in any way for the hub, but it was kind of as close as we could get it at the time. Like, this is kind of where we are right at this stage. This is what we can agree on. And I mean, that was a really fun process working hand in hand with Ethan. And after that, I ended up doing a whole bunch of things at the ICF. I was doing like lots of product work across the whole stack. I ran the funding program, did investments, just really like anything that needed to get done. I was working on at the ICF. And the last 6 months of my tenure there, Ethan was basically like, okay, like the ecosystem is kind of like in an okay place right now, but we haven't given any attention to the hub. So Billy Rennekamp, my counterpart at the OCF, was kind of assigned to develop an engineering team at Interchain, and I was assigned to basically formulate some kind of vision, white paper document. That said, the way that the actual, I mean, this is now like a multi-billion-dollar network, so it's like you don't typically write a white paper for something that's like been live for a long time. So, and honestly, like I'm not, no one person can like create a document like that. So, I ended up talking to as many people as I possibly could, and a number of people connected me to individuals who would end up becoming authors on the paper. So I met Yusuf, I met Max. There's just this kind of like band of characters that ended up coming together, and I did a little bit of the kind of coordination and synthesis from many different voices. I also did all these interviews with validators, with different, members of the ecosystem, and tried to editorialize and synthesize something that kind of made sense. And what came out of that was the Atom 2.0 paper. I think a lot of the core ideas there were good. I think I made a number of mistakes, and like we made a number of mistakes when trying to put it up to the community like we did. So I learned a lot through that process. But I've been really encouraged by at least some strands of those ideas kind of making their way into current initiatives, even if they aren't exactly as we had kind of initially proposed. And really that was the objective at the end of the day, was to at least kind of set the hub in a direction at all. And so from that standpoint, I think we were quite successful.
Yes, I would completely agree with that. I think I want to come back maybe quickly on the mistake, what you identify as mistake as part of the Atom 2.0 thing, and maybe what you learned for Timewave in the process. But let's get into this. So let's get into Timewave now. Max, that's for you. Can you define the Atom allocator, the Interchain allocator? Sorry, and if Timewave is different, significantly different, or slightly different, a little bit on that as well.
Yeah. So. Yeah, just to be clear, definitely the Interchain allocator, not just the Atom allocator. It definitely can play a very large role in Atom, and we can talk about that. So we're starting by just building the things that we already talked about in the white paper. We mentioned the rebalancer and the covenant system. The rebalancer in its most basic form is just a portfolio manager. The idea there being that the Cosmos Hub, they have, and most blockchains, they have treasuries denominated in their native token. And portfolio management 101 is that like you want to diversify. And so if you want to have 5%, 10%, 20% of your tokens in a stable coin, or maybe some neutron tokens, like whatever the token might be, it's very hard for a decentralized organization to actively maintain that. They'll get front run. It's hard to reach consensus. There are bunch of technical hurdles. So the rebalancer will just enable any decentralized organization, whether it's a blockchain's community pool or a DAO, to set a target portfolio. And then once they make that one governance decision to set that portfolio, the rebalancer will maintain that over time. Then there's the covenant system. And the covenant system is all about making bilateral, multilateral agreements. And so if, let's say, the Cosmos Hub wants to do a big token swap with Neutron, they could enter into a covenant and make that happen, where as soon as one side says these are the terms that we would agree to, all the other side has to do is agree, and it would immediately happen. It could be 2-party, 3-party, any number of parties in its eventual form. So we're going to start there and see where it goes. And the Interchain Allocator, it's just the real core idea here. We can get into the technicals, we can get into the money side of things, but the real important thing I'd like for us to focus on with it is that it's all about making sure that we have the tools necessary to collaborate where collaboration makes sense, and like really improve the culture. So we're not always at each other's throats doing our drama per second thing that we're famous for in Cosmos. This is by no means like a kumbaya thing. The Interchain Allocator will not solve all of Cosmos's problems, but I think there are times where collaboration makes a lot of sense, and there are technical hurdles in the way. And our goal is to create those tools for collaboration between decentralized organizations.
So is it is the Interchain Allocator exactly the same as what you were describing in the paper, exactly the same as what you plan to do with Timewave, or is there differences here?
I would say it's very similar. The covenant system, I'm almost describing word for word. The rebalancer I'm describing almost word for word. I think a big piece that isn't here are what some people started talking about as like interchain allocator DAOs or treasury DAOs. We're not doing any of that work. I think it could make sense for other blockchains to decide how they want to use it, whether they do have just a majority vote on a proposal or they do allocate some capital to a group to use it. That's out of scope of what we're doing at the moment. But yeah, what we are doing is the covenant system and the rebalancer at the moment.
Right. And is the rebalancer and the covenant system going to be part of the first version of Timewave, or is it something that is going to be developed over time?
Yeah. So right now, our goal is to develop just the minimum viable versions of each thing. And so with the rebalancer, there's a minimum viable version of that. With the covenant system, there's a minimum viable version of that. And our goal is to just build each of those in a way that generate as much value as possible for the people they're designed for, and eventually be great to stitch these together to create this overarching thing that is the whole Interchain Allocator. But right now, it's looking like two separate.
Right. And so a question for Sam. I think, Sam, you're kind of in charge of the technical vision for this. Initially, what form did that take? I believe you guys have been talking to Neutron in the Atom 2.0 white paper. I don't think it was clearly defined, but it was possibly mentioned as a new consumer chain. So where are you with that?
Yeah. So we are building these things as a set of Cosmos of contracts. We've been discussing with Neutron about deployment there. There's still some, T's to be crossed, I's to be dotted. So kind of reserve the right to deploy wherever it makes most sense, but it's looking quite positive at this point. It doesn't really make sense for us to launch our own chain at this stage. There's a lot of overhead and complexity there, and we want to get to market soon. And I guess one kind of tactical point, adding on to your question about is this the allocator that's mentioned in the white paper? We have simplified a number of things, and we've really talked to customers, and customers have come to us. So we are building for specific needs, and not some grand vision at the moment. We think that just those two problems that were identified, like community pools not having a way to get into stablecoins, something that is pretty universal, and we've actually got requests to help with. And similarly, we've gotten a number of requests to kind of help with the kind of ameliorating the relationship between the hub and consumer chains, or entering into these kind of DAO to DAO type agreements. So we're really just trying to build the thing that people are asking us to build, not telling people what they want.
I think I'm one of these requests, and I can clearly see the need for something like Timewave to help with the consumer chain partnership and integration that we want between themselves. One of them, and I don't think we are. I mean, you can tell me if you guys want to keep this under wrap, but I would expect that you can explain what you would do with Stride, which is one of these customers and users that would be very happy to have Timewave live right now.
Yeah, so happy to talk about this mainly because I think it's kind of coming from Stride. They mentioned this in their proposal to the Cosmos Hub to become a consumer chain.
Yeah.
So they want as part of that deal, basically, we're going to become a consumer chain that's going to bring revenue to the hub. There's going to be a lot of ways that's going to bring value to the hub. Well, one of the things that Stride is interested in getting in return is an allotment of atoms from the community pool. They can split 50% of the atoms, and they can put that into an LP pool on a Cosmos Hub, on a DEX that lives on Cosmos Hub. So, right now that we don't really have the tools to do that. So, that was an instance in which they came to us and were like, "Is this something that you can help us with?"
And I can emphasize that this is something that a lot of other chains, potential consumer chains, are interested in. Obviously, liquidity injections from the Cosmos Hub is a major part of the success and the value proposition for ICS and replicated security in particular. And I can foresee in your pipeline at least 4 or 5 potential customers here that would use these services, which is one of the reasons why I'm especially interested and excited about Timewave. Max, coming back to you, you have some very interesting ideas around building this atom economic zone, not just from a technical perspective, but also more from a financial perspective in terms of making atom kind of the base assets. You have some thoughts on under collateralized loans for consumer chains. Some of that was in the white paper. Some of that we discussed on the call previously. Maybe you can talk a little bit about that, especially your what you see as the best first use case for Timewave.
Yeah. So we're beginning with that. So there's a lot of financial engineering that we could be doing. And when I began the work with the white paper, the question I kept on coming back to is what is the Cosmos Hub uniquely good at? And so what's great about the hub? They have the most valuable token, they have the most liquid token, they have the strongest validator set. And so as I was looking at that, I was thinking, okay, how can we leverage this to the hub's advantage? And so when it came to that, this idea of the atom economic zone really emerged, and I have to credit Zucky with first mentioning it. And we're already starting to see it emerge with Neutron. We're starting to see it emerge with Stride. And really, the idea here is that if the hub already has enough conviction in a chain like Neutron or a chain like Stride to share its security with that chain, they probably also think it's a pretty good investment. And so a lot of what the Interchain Allocator does is enable investments and incentive alignments when it comes to swapping tokens, doing fee sharing, a variety of different things. And so, just really think about how we can use the hub's liquidity to its advantage. Thibaut, to your point, we were talking about what are things that Cosmos, not just the hub, but as a whole, is uniquely capable of doing. And even if it's not uniquely capable, what does the technology stack position itself to do more easily than others potentially? And as we're just throwing ideas out there, one of the ideas that made its way into the paper that no one's really been talking about much, but in a conversation with Thibaut, it came up, is just the idea of under collateralized loans. And that's how we mentioned it in the paper, but really it's using liquidity as your collateral. So let's say there was $100 million of liquidity between Atom and Neutron tokens, and Neutron wanted to borrow $50 million worth of Atom from the hub. Neutron could potentially, this is out of scope of our MVP for sure, but just saying some far out ideas of what we can do here. The hub might want to give Neutron that $50 million loan and just have a covenant in place that says, hey, Neutron, if your liquidity ever falls beneath 50 million or maybe a buffer of 75 million, we will print neutron tokens and sell that on the open market as a collateral against this loan. So things like that begin to be possible in an atom economic zone when you start to share not just these like security relationships, but potentially these monetary and economic relationships as well.
Yeah. The reason we could print the neutron token is because neutron is being run by the Cosmos of validators. And so, people criticize sometimes replicated security as a big overhead on validators and it's not scalable and blah, 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 blah. But the reality is that the fact that you share the same validator set also has its benefits. We did a whole video with Jehan on what we can do as there's a 100% overlap between the validators. On the technical level, there are some interesting stuff. You just mentioned one that is not on the technical level, more on the financial kind of monetary level. I know you have a lot of more ideas on that front, and I have mine myself. And that's also one of the reasons why I think the autonomous economic zone is going to be a place where people want to be. And there's going to be a group of selected chains, very high quality, that are going to form a tight-knit, group and exclusive group of chain that will want to compete to actually be in that first circle. And then we can build bigger circle with opt-in security, with mesh security, and so on, like different version of shared security.
Just provide a little color on
yes.
this example, because it's clearly the most exotic, imaginative example that's in the paper. And applying it specifically to neutron here, I just don't want to have people misunderstand where we're coming from. So there is a kind of consentful relationship that is necessary for anything like this to happen. Neutron and we're opting into this deal, and so it's not like the hub is going to print neutron tokens. I just want to make that crystal clear.
Yeah, and to add the ability to print tokens should not be something that is like default enabled. That should be a very specific, very mindfully crafted thing if you ever want to go down that super exotic route. I just bring it up because sovereign debt markets are one of the biggest markets in the world, and these are increasingly looking like these like sovereign nation states. And so just thinking about the sorts of products that could look like that, this was one, but we are far away from that. There'll be a while before we get there, but just wanted to give some food for thought.
Yeah. We don't want to scare any consumer chain away by saying we're going to print token on their behalf. This is for sure a part of a consensual contractual relationship that would be very clearly specified, and it's just a solution of last resort that would give the hub the confidence to actually go ahead with something like this. And both parties will obviously stand to benefit enormously from this kind of deal. But it's not something that will be done on a whim from the Cosmos Hub validators. I think it's very clear for everyone right now. Awesome. So in terms of what the project looks like at the moment, I'm interested to hear, I guess from you, Sam. Who is the team behind Timewave? How many of you are there? Who are they? Or do we know them? Have people heard of them? And how do you guys connect and decided it was after the 2.0 kind of rejection of the white paper? How did you decide to go ahead and form this group together?
So the members are Max, myself, Udit Mitra, the DAO developer, popularly known as Akez, actual name is Zeke, and Bensky, and we're working a little bit with Sasha from 2.0. These are all folks that we've interacted with one another either through the Out of 2.0 project or elsewhere. And there's just a lot of kind of shared interests. I would actually say the Timewave was formed first because we just had a strong affiliation and wanted to work with one another, and only second because there was the correct context to do so. So I would be very happy to work on another project with the same group. It's really a very special group of people that I'm quite honored to collaborate with. And we've been kind of working on the side for a number of months now. We all kind of have work elsewhere. Max, I think, is really the only person who's full-time focused on this, although that will change relatively soon. Some of our membership is going to be focusing full time. We've just been paying out of pocket. So during that bootstrapping phase, we've found to be a good score.
Right. And so is it a project, like what's your expectation for this project? Is it going to be a public good for the Cosmos Hub and other chains to use? Or is there an expectation of profit, of a different kind of ambitions for it?
Yeah. So the way that the covenant system is designed right now, it is largely a public good. We are thinking about ways that it could be monetized. The way I kind of see Timewave's kind of contributions to the ecosystem and product suite is that there are a number of things that we should be doing to grow Cosmos. And I think this is true of really everyone right now. Like they're just basic things that we need to be doing in the ecosystem to expand the addressable market overall. And these really should be public goods. I do quite a few of these things for Skip and for Timewave, and the covenant system right now, I think really represents, it is one of these public goods. There are ways to monetize it in the future, but it's not really necessary at the moment. And the rebalancer system, I think, is a little bit easier to directly monetize. Not sure, we're considering a couple different options there as well. But it's really easiest to take the approach of just like trying to serve demand and listen to customers and then talk to them to kind of understand a monetization model that they feel comfortable with. And I think that we want to aim for a win-win scenario with customers where they don't feel like they're being charged undue fees. Like they should only be paying for the surplus value that we're providing beyond what they could do alone.
Right. And for you, Max, what do you see? So my understanding, and maybe you can correct that or give more details here, that you guys will go to the Atom governance and ask for funding from the Atom governance. Maybe you can first confirm that and tell us a little bit more about the next steps for Timewave to actually make it happen.
Yeah. So where we're at the moment, I mentioned how the rebalancer is going to be one product, the covenant system another. Our goal is to create both of those, strip them down into the most minimum viable form, and then see in that most minimum viable form what groups do they add the most value to. And so starting with the rebalancer, that has the potential to be a constant source of order flow. And so that could be really helpful for anyone wanting to stand up like a new DeFi center. And so step one is to go to Neutron. We're going to put together a proposal for us to build a minimum viable version of the rebalancer on Neutron. And we think it makes sense for them to fund that because whatever chain we build that rebalancer on, they're going to get a lot of value from that, from MEV and from a variety of other sources. So that's step one. Once we figure out what chain we want to build the rebalancer on, and whichever chain we could strike that deal with, step two would be the minimum viable covenant system. And the Cosmos Hub has the most to gain from that. The covenant system can really supercharge the Hub's replicated security offering. And so because it has the most value to add to the Cosmos Hub, we think it makes sense for the Cosmos Hub to pay for a minimum viable implementation of that. The covenant system could also be really relevant to mesh security, to other models as well. They just haven't really launched yet. They're not really in production at the level that replicate security is. And so that's our current plan. And once we build those two minimum viable products, we'll then reassess and figure out what makes the most sense.
I think it's smart to go and target these two different customers. Like you clearly see, sometimes people criticize that the hub is becoming this place where it's essentially a community pool that people use to fund stuff that not necessarily is targeted enough for the Cosmos Hub and for growing specifically that particular blockchain. And the fact that you guys put one for Neutron because it's especially helpful for Neutron and one for the Cosmos Hub, I think is a clear signal that you've identified one customer for one and another customer for the other. That's pretty great. Maybe so we kind of got that from that conversation, but maybe can you repeat the potential value accrual for the hub of having the covenant system, just to make sure it's laid out very clearly here?
Yeah. So Sam, do you want to take it? Or do you want me to go for it? I'll take.
Okay.
I'll take a stab. So right now the hub has replicated security. It's really great. That's getting all this traction. We see, I believe it's 25% fees with Neutron, 15% fees with Stride. That's really excellent. However, like it's pretty obvious that there will be competition, mesh security, other security offerings, and so there has the potential to be a race to the bottom with these fees. And so if the hub wants to make sure it's getting a really good deal, how can it use its core strengths, its liquidity, its market cap, its validator set? Like how can we use that in such a way that really makes that product sticky? And so like just one example of what you can do with a covenant system is say, and again, just using Neutron purely for example, Neutron, like we will give you like $10 million of liquidity so long as you stay secured by Interchain security. If and the hub specifically replicates security. If you leave and do mesh security or get or something else, we will have less liquidity. We will reduce or eliminate that liquidity. That increases the stickiness of Interchain security for the hub and makes it that much more compelling. And since the hub has the most liquidity by its market cap, it has the most to gain from features like that. Another thing that I alluded to would be token swaps. Like the hub, it thinks that it gives security to Neutron because it believes in the future of Neutron. Using the covenant system, you could have like a one-time large swap to not just like swap tokens and have it on your balance sheet, but also be providing liquidity. So yeah, Sam, do you think I missed anything?
Yeah, I'll just mention this. This was in the paper as well, but worth emphasizing. The hub has the great benefit of having large market cap and is liquid on many different venues, but it has yet to become kind of like the interchain base pair, the de facto base pair everywhere. I mean, there's many dexes launching. There was just an inherent limitation with the old staking model, basically. Only approximately 33% of the supply could be exported from the hub. So the allocator is a mechanism by which the hub can deploy Atom or the liquid staked versions of Atom into some of these dexes that are rising, and that is really going to help substantiate Atom as a numeric base pair in a number of these dexes, and so that's how you kind of make Atom the money of the interchain. It becomes the kind of preferred collateral asset, and this is a vehicle and an instrument to make that happen.
Yeah, I want to comment one thing just on Mac's point that there are going to be a lot of different options for shared security, and that replicated security may have competition. I think the hub is a really really strong position to provide security. It is a great provider of security regardless of the form that it uses for shared security, whether that's mesh or replicated or opt-in. Like the hub is going to be the beast in the ecosystem that is able to provide that service. And I like the fact that something like the Timewave would be able to provide different level of liquidity for different kind of use case. So for instance, if it's replicated security, you get more liquidity than if you would just use opt-in or mesh, because the revenue that flows back to the Atom stakers and validators would be less. So it would be like it's a perfect way to adjust the parameters so that the hub continues to cover different form of shared security and is able to incentivize the one it likes the most for specific chains. So it gives us that flexibility, which I think is very a great feature of this project. Okay, so when Timewave, what's the timeline for it?
Good question. So we are we've been working for a while. We have some pretty detailed specs for both of these, and we are starting on the engineering process. In terms of timeline, the most urgent engineering timeline is the Stride specific implementation of covenants, and they've been asking us to kind of accelerate that. and we are waiting on a few features to be delivered to Stride, and we're waiting for the kind of neutron initiation sequence to complete, and for us to kind of like to square away whatever deal maybe have there for actually locating contracts on neutron. So that is to say, like we're probably 2 months away or something from contracts that we can start testing. And I don't want to give anything too. I don't want to pin this down to like an exact date, because there's a lot of kind of contingencies and partners that are required along the way, including Informal, who's going to be doing an audit for us. So in the next quarter is maybe reasonable to say.
So when do you think we can expect, again, you're not committing yourself to anything here, but when do you think the governance proposal on the Cosmos Hub would happen?
Yeah. So step one is us figuring out where we want to have the rebalancer. For a variety of reasons, we would like that for it to be neutron. We still need to make sure we nail down the details there. We're aiming for that to be closed by the end of June. If that doesn't close, that will delay other things, and we'll have to look elsewhere. But assuming that works out, probably shortly after that, we would want to do something on the hub. So targeting maybe a post on the hub sometime in July, maybe a proposal sometime in August.
Right. I will be looking forward to that, and I will be supporting this heavily. I think this is a great proposal and something that is really missing at the moment. What about, so Sam, I think it was clear that you want to stay away from governance. And I think many people will understand why after what happened last year. Let's talk about that for 1 second. What do you think in the process of writing and then socializing the Atom 2.0 white paper, what do you think went wrong, and why was it rejected with veto ultimately?
Yeah. Maybe I'll preface this by saying, I still plan on being involved in governance in various capacities. I mean, I advise a lot of people on matters pertaining to like different chain governance, and from like how the governance system should be constructed. I was advised Penumbra on some modifications there, neutron, etc. To your question about what went wrong, or maybe I would have done differently with regard to Atom 2.0. Monetary policy, I was also relatively comfortable with how we approached it, but that's another one where like you're never going to please everyone. And I know that some people are now thinking about like proposing changes to the hub's monetary policy. I wish them luck. That is a hard task. Yeah, I mean, overall, I would just say the more private conversations and matter of fact like justification and explanation of why we're doing this. Maybe some changes. Not calling them councils, which is apparently a triggering word, and a word that was like directly derives from some informal like council system. Like I just like took that from Ethan's language. So anyway, lots of stuff that I would have done differently, but
right.
Overall, I mean, one, it was the largest marketing campaign Cosmos has ever had, accidentally, but I think there's something to be said for that. I'm very encouraged by a lot of the initiatives that ended up following Atom 2.0, even though it was a little bit disheartening to see the vote outcome. And I mean, the things that have progressed so far, I think actually are somewhat in line with at least the kind of core premises that we're making and suggestions. So, liquid staking is clearly a big part of the Atom story. I think that has been proven out and will continue to be proven out. Interchain security obviously has been a pretty big success so far, I anticipate it'll continue to do very well. And the allocator portion, we're getting inbound
about it. Yes.
asking us to develop some of these features, so that's been really encouraging. And the scheduler stuff, I'll just say that there are some very fun things that we're going to be rolling out at Skip. My thinking about this stuff has evolved significantly, and I think that there's some very cool things that we want to do that take those ideas much further. So I'll just tease, I guess. Not much more I want to say this time.
Yeah. We're gonna save that for another one. I've already invited your teammates or your colleagues at Skip to talk about their plans on that. But I think you're right. There was essentially 4 layers to this. You just mentioned them: in-chain security, liquid staking, allocator, and scheduler. It seems like essentially all of them are going to happen anyway. People wanted them in separate boxes and be able to vote separately. That's what they're going to get essentially. On that side, it's making pretty much everyone happy. The monetary policy and the big mint and all that, I wasn't a fan of myself. I would have made that a separate proposal for sure. But it's great that the Atom Accelerator DAO and other people, including us at Informal, are thinking about that stuff, and it's probably going to come as a 5th proposal that people can vote on specifically on that.
I mean, I haven't been tracking super closely, but honestly, the community pool is starting to near the original mint amount that was suggested. So it's not super far off from that. I was going to say. I think actually one thing I will mention that I think is a very real reaction that I did not fully anticipate was validators being concerned about the kind of radical change to their business model, and I absolutely should have been more sensitive to that. I think that we are now having the right conversations. I was thinking through a lot of this while writing the paper. We modeled out the costs of validators and the payments that were being made, and did quite a bit of work to figure out how liquid staking would reduce potential returns, and I did a lot of education during the Atom 2.0 kind of tour. I've been very, very happy to see the conversations around replicated security. These are not easy conversations to have because it affects validators in line and their job, their livelihood. But I think the level of discourse has really been elevated now that replicated security is kind of.
Yeah, and we've been making this revenue projection for each consumer chain separately. The challenge here is essentially, you are shooting in the dark because there's no precedent for it. It's very hard to estimate blockchain revenues. It's heavily based on token prices. And so we ourselves have a hard time imagining, 2 or 3 years from now, what the validator income will look like in absence of inflation, compensated through in-chain security revenues. We are going to publish a paper on that from Juan from our economic research team in the coming days. That gives a bit of light and give a comparison of what it is to use in-chain security versus having a software chain that dilutes their token away through constant emissions for security. But that's a very interesting topic. Anything else you guys wanted to discuss today, talk about? Any last comment, any question I didn't ask that you feel should be answered before we wrap up?
I would just invite people to reach out to us. We are at the very beginning of our journey here, so we're super interested to talk to people in the ecosystem that are interested in what we're building. We've had a couple of really productive conversations so far, but we haven't been super public with what we're doing, and we would really benefit from more exposure to criticism and to people who really think that this is something that would be valuable to them.
I'm in the second group for sure. What about you, Max?
Yeah, just echo Sam's statement, and Thyborg, just want to thank you for having us come on. It's really real honor to be here. This is the the exact place we would want to have our debut and first conversation, first announcement about this. So yeah, thanks for giving us this platform.
Awesome. That's exactly why we started this channel, for people like you guys. So it's a perfect fit. Thanks, Sam. Thanks, Max. Let's talk offline now.